Okay, since it's about 5, 6 after, why don't we go ahead and start introductions, and then we'll go ahead and start our meeting and our presentation. So I'll go ahead and start. I'm Cindy Price, and I'm the Simulation Learning Strategist at Advent Health, and I am your FHSA chairperson. And thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll have a wonderful presentation for you. And we also wanted to make you aware that we have lots of other links on here that Mariano has been working hard in the background to get us up and running. So next I will have Mariano introduce himself.
Thank you, Cindy. My name is Mariano Lu, and I work for Ross University School of Medicine, which is located in Miramar, Florida, and currently in charge of all the technology for the society, for the Alliance. Looking forward to Melisa's presentation. Thank you.
Melissa, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Melisa Colon. I am a simulation operations specialist with Advent Health. I am also one of the representatives for the Florida Healthcare Simulation Alliance.
Nelson, would you like to introduce yourself?
I can remember to unmute myself. Yes. Hi. Hi, guys. My name is Nelson Pena, and I'm the representative for the south end of the state down here in Miami-Dade County, Broward too as well. So welcome.
Nelson. So you've just met some of our leadership staff here with FHSA. Elaine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Elaine Calsinger. I'm Assistant Professor of Clinical Nursing at Duke University, and I'm the Sim Liaison for the Society of Simulation in Healthcare and a member of the Simulation Committee for the National Organization of Nurse Practitioner Faculties.
Thank you, Elaine. Marlene, would you like to introduce yourself? It looks like Marlene fell off the call. Marlene, would you like to introduce yourself? Vanessa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I work with Nelson at the Baptist Health Clinical Learning Center in the Patient Care Simulation Lab.
Thank you. It looks like we have unanswers on here. If you'd like to introduce yourself. Okay, and that looks like just about all of our participants. Unless I missed someone, please let me know. And
Ramon, would you like to introduce yourself?
You didn't answer earlier.
Oh, hi, I'm Ramon Carrera. I work with Nelson at Baptist, and I'm a simulator coordinator over there.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that I missed on the call that'd like to introduce themselves? Okay. Well,
later.
Yes, go ahead.
Angel Later, program manager for paramedic program at Central State College. I'm currently driving, so I can only have audio for the moment.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and it's 10 after, so we're going to go ahead and let Melissa start with her presentation.
Well, good evening, everybody, and once again, thank you for joining us. As we previously heard, my name is Melisa Colon. I'm a simulation operations specialist with Advent Health. A little background about myself: I've been a paramedic for a little over 10 years, and I've been specializing in simulation operations for the last 4 years. I am a certified healthcare simulation operations specialist and educator, and I currently hold a bachelor's in healthcare simulation from Central State College. So today's goals and objectives are essentially just to discuss the creation of simulation operations specialist development within your organization. As always, I have no disclosures at this time, but I always like to give people a heads up that I do own 2 dogs in the backyard in my background, so you probably might hear them at some point during this conversation, so please ignore them. Currently, one of them is underneath my legs due to the storm. As mentioned before, my objective is to discuss the development of an implementation of a process for providing professional development for our simulation operations specialists within our organization. For this specific presentation, we're actually going to use the Kearns model for the creation of our program. But before we get to that point, I wanted to explain a little bit more about our association. I work for Advent Health. We are one of the largest healthcare providers in the United States. We have thousands of compassionate professionals with a shared mission and vision of extending the healing ministry of Christ around the country. Our department is within Advent Health, and we are a large organization. We are the Learning Technology Simulation Training Department that handles all simulation support for all of Advent Health campuses within the Florida system. As you guys are aware, the campuses, they're so large that our team has been split in different departments to meet the needs of Advent Health as a whole. 2 specific teams that we have are assistance team. These teams are, this team specifically travels across all 18 campuses of Advent Health to provide simulation support. They're not based in a specific location. They usually come out of Altamont. They handle a lot of our bigger projects that are not campus supported, along with new simulation needs. Following that is our campus-specific support team. Our campus-specific support team just handles 6 campuses. We currently are in Celebration, Winter Park, Altamont, Orlando, and East Orlando. These campus-specific support teams usually have 1 or 2 SOSs specifically designed to them to support the organization. Followed by that, we do have just 1 team for new hire orientation. They handle all of the needs for any onboarding that comes to across the association, from nurses to doctors to techs, you name it, they're probably assisting with these. Following that, we also have a simulation team that's specific to our university, and they handle all the training and support for just the students based on that. We also have our own AHA accredited center to provide classes like PALS and ACLS for the system. And last but not least, we have our learning center for Advent Health that handles a lot of our education support for our ALN classes online. As you can see, our team is rather large. We specifically only have 2 simulation learning strategists. These are going to be our RNs. Their purpose is to help our customers with the creation and implementation of simulation with the best strategies associated with that. Following with that, we have a large group of over 30 simulation operations specialists. We do believe very strong in their growth and their professional development. So the Association of Advent Health has created 3 levels of simulation operations specialists. Our first level is our introductory level. These are usually people who have 0 to 1 years of experience. They have no certifications. They have no degrees. Once you've been with us for a couple of years and you've chosen to get your CHSE or your CHSE, or you but no formal bachelor's degree and 2-3 years of experience, they're upgraded or promoted to an SOS level 2. And for our more experienced staff who does have that 4-year degree, that does have that certification, and the 3 years of experience, they are our level 3s. As you can see, we have a varied range of simulation operations specialists. I think right now our team stands at 30 SOSs itself to help support the organization. These members of our team they're amazing people with very different backgrounds. Some of them have come with no simulation experience and have rapidly grown through our stages of SOSs, and some are still beginning their careers in simulations. Some of them have an education degree, an EMS degree, an IT degree. We've had people who worked in colleges. So when they came into our program, we provided them with some sort of introductory classes that how to growth in their career. But here we are today. I think the reality of it, and the thing that we all have to admit to ourselves, is that simulation is constantly growing. We are finding new innovations every day, whether it's from the education aspect of it or if it's the technology aspect of it. You know, a couple of years ago, in the 1960s and 70s, it was a doll that would sit in a bed and we would have to play pretend to provide them a simulation. It was up to the educator. As our careers grew, so did the advances in technology. As you can see from some of these pictures, you have task trainers, you have more innovative, high-tech simulation mannequins. So the question comes to us is, how do we grow our people? It's something that's very important, especially with operations, because education has a rapid growth and background with it that can be implemented into simulation. But operations is rapidly growing to keep up with technology, and unfortunately, we are at times not preparing our people adequately enough to grow with the careers of it. So sadly, with situations like this, you can easily see turnover within your staff because they don't feel accomplished enough. As a result of that, we identified a problem within our organization. How do we keep our staff informed of the best practice in simulation? We've noticed recently that besides the technology overview, some of our simulation operations specialists, when they went to get their certification, there was a lot of new questions in the test for learning theories. And if we keep our staff with just the basics, how do we provide them with a foundation of why we do things and advocate for simulation? Our president for the Society of Simulation for 2020 has brought in a big push for advocacy of simulation. And in order to do that, we need to be the voice of reasoning. And with such a large amount of staff that we currently carry at Advent Health, it was very important for us to grow them. So using the current model, we identify the problem. Our current approach is honestly most of what most people do, which is sending their staff to conferences such as IMISH, our Sun conference. We would provide vendor classes. And then institution-based classes like Drexel, we did send some of them out. But as previously mentioned, it's very important to know that because our staff is so large, we do end up having a situation where we do have our own barriers. Money is an issue. We can't send everybody. So who do we send? Do we send the most experienced that needs to keep growing, or do we send the more novice that needs the growth and the knowledge? And that became a situation. We support over 50 to 60 programs that are constantly being run in Advent Health. So do we take staff off our programs, not support our customers to help them grow, and then instead kind of lack ourselves back in production? And then the ever popular response that we all get for 2020 and 2019, COVID-19 happened. And what happens? They stopped all education. So things like AMISH was canceled, SimGoes were canceled. So because we're trying to grow and we're trying to learn, and we keep getting these barriers that we're not really quite sure how we get through them, education was stopped. And we figured that there was something that we needed to do for our staff to help them grow. So we follow with a targeted needs assessment for our department. I think the best part of this is that sometimes when it comes to creating education for your staff, you have to get leadership buy-in, but leadership was the one who wanted to bring this information to our staff members. So leadership led the needs assessment for the staff based on our education needs. We focused on a couple of things, and the first thing that we wanted to focus on when we were picking topics to cover was what deficiencies do our staff have? Is it that they're not sure of new topics? Is it that new equipment is coming into the door and we're not properly assessing the situation with it? The second thing that we also really wanted to focus on was, like mentioned before, was simulation updates. What has changed in the market to be able to help our staff grow with it? We are constantly having programs that are very engaging. So it's one of those things where like we need to be ahead of the ball game. Following that were our goals and our objectives. We had broad goals, which was just to improve staff knowledge. As mentioned before, some of our associates, they they didn't come from a simulation background, and they had just fresh started into their careers. So how do we grow them? How do we improve them? But most importantly, with such a large group and such many resources that Advent Health has, we wanted to prepare our staff to be leaders in the healthcare simulation field. We wanted to prepare them to be able to get up and present at other organizations and some of these conferences as education as well, to provide them with that knowledge. So these classes were a great way to get them to get comfortable in their own skin and comfortable in their own knowledges and needs assessments to be able to look forward to that. So how do we pick classes? We wanted to kill two birds with one stone and wanted to prepare everybody for the CHSE and the CHSE if necessary. So we identified classes in the beginning and broke them down to what our testing would look like. So concepts in healthcare as applied to simulation, we created a basic medical terminology 101 class. This just went over concepts and how to break them down. And in that way, when staff saw something in a scenario, they were able to figure out what it was without having to stress out too much about it, while also preparing them for the test. Advanced cardiac life support and pediatric advanced life support. I think that about 50% of our simulations is to keep up with the competencies for our staff at the AHA. Our operations specialists are running these tasks for them. We wanted them to know the why. We wanted them to be able to think ahead and become a support for all of your facilitators. So if they were going to do an ACLS mock code, why do we shock a patient? How do we shock a patient? At what joules do we shock a patient? How does it affect our mannequin? And what is the safety for our learners? I think out of our staff, myself and another member are ACLS and PAL certified. So while we knew the concept, not everybody else did. So we wanted to make sure that we tailored for that. Pediatric advanced life support, you know, when it comes to simulation, we're training for those high acuity, those high events that cause staff stress, and pediatric mock codes are one of them. My background in paramedics as well was, I came from a pediatric simulation center. So pediatric simulations is very important to me because we are not just taking care of little people, we are taking care of a different anatomy in the body. So we want to make sure that the staff provided the resources for these simulations to be run accordingly. So we're not running it with a big mannequin and telling them, hey, pretend that he's 5, but he's 50 pounds. So that's always the issue, right? Simulation technology and operations. This is pretty standard across the board. We had new technology that went through our doors constantly. Currently, right now, we're updating our fleet. Our staff works mostly with layered-on mannequins. Every now and then we get a Gamard. How do we make sure that everybody can run that one mannequin? We do have some individuals that are more competent with these technologies, so we had them take the lead. But also, what are the best practices? A good example for it would be, we were told in one of the classes to make sure you wait the 2 full minutes for defibrillation on a Laerdal ALS mannequin, because you can damage the mannequin if you try to speed up. And that's something that I was not aware, for example. Half the staff wasn't aware, but because we had somebody that went down, looked at the manual, looked at the important information, we were able to share something that in turn would be a return for our organization, because we're making sure that we're not abusing our products. Simulation task trainer review. We're currently buying simulation task trainers. In fact, our fleet is so large that sometimes we make our own task trainers. So how do we make sure that what we have made is going to have a long-term investment? How do we prepare the staff to do that? So that was one of the things that we kind of went into and break down with it. Healthcare simulation practices, principles, and procedures. Simulation 101. Cindy, our simulation learning strategist, has created a class specifically to tell our SOSs the basics of simulation, because sometimes that is what helps the best to bring the introduction to it. From what is debriefing, what is an effective pre-brief, simulation Dictionary was the next one, because we hear about standardized patients. What does that mean? Somebody who has no background in simulation can easily be confused by the situation. And then a favorite of mine is moulage classes. What works on your mannequins and what doesn't work on your mannequins. These are things that are great, but along with that, you know, our staff we realized that some of our staff is pretty artistic and had creativity when it comes to that. So we know who we can rely on when we get to the point where we don't know how to create something. Professional roles and behaviors. We created classes basic on just professional roles. Classes like how to build a CV to apply for your CHSE. Classes that had to deal with our job descriptions. What were our roles? We identified the need for classes for systems operations specialists and campus-based operations specialists because our roles weren't the same as we believed. And then the last one was concepts in instructional design application. Our staff, our SOSs, are essentially run as mini project managers. So we wanted to make sure that their system was standardized in the way that they can create a program that from start to finish was rolled out and we had no issues. So we kind of reviewed on how that stuff went out. Following that, we found out what educational strategies work best for us. So mentioned before, we wanted the team to lead the classes. We didn't want leadership to lead the classes because we wanted the ability to have our people share their knowledge and have this stress-free environment. We always talk about psychological safety within our learners, but we wanted psychological safety within our team. We encouraged didactic classes, but we also wanted them to push forward for something that was a little bit more creative. So some of our courses were hands-on workshops, but a lot of them ended up being with team building exercises. So here's a couple of examples of what our staff did. For medical terminology, as you can see, our SOS right here, who is our referee, they created a putt-putt game. So the staff would work together as a team. When they score, they were allowed to answer a question. The teams were broken down from novice simulation operations specialists to expert simulation operations specialists. We also made sure that there was somebody with medical knowledge to be able to provide them with feedback. This became one of those classes that we were so excited to present just because they opened up the whole experience for our staff. So it wasn't that situation of like, oh man, I have to sit in the classroom for 8 hours and listen to somebody talk. They moved around, they created things. For the program development class, our staff created a communication exercise that they would have to repeat the creation of a Lego on a step-by-step basis to allow them to not be able to communicate through a wall because somebody had to give instructions. And this was great reflection because how our programs work is that we have a lead that creates the program for the rest of the staff with our simulation learning strategist and then turns around and develops that and then provides that program to the staff. So the lead is the person that has to tell the people step by step of how we're creating it and how we're guiding them. And the rest of the staff is not always necessarily seeing the program as a whole all the way till the end. So this is a great way to kind of give them that feedback. One of the things that we've noticed was implementation. This is probably the one that took a little bit of the longest part of it. We had support by the leadership staff, which is great, so it made it a little bit easier. The first thing that we had to figure out what was the location of our training. We needed to find a place that was adaptable because our staff wanted to create these exercises. And we needed a place that we had a place to do lecture and then move around, but you know, the goal of this education was also simulation. So we wanted to make sure that we had simulation rooms available if we needed to rotate with that. So for that reason, we picked East Orlando, which is currently one of our simulation areas. East Orlando is our lab that's a little bit over, I think, 1,000 square feet, if not more. And it contains 4 simulation rooms as well as 2 lecture areas that provided us that flexibility. These dates were very important for us. They were one of those things that we wanted to make sure that we took a priority for it. So we scheduled all the dates about a year in advance. The understanding was that we wouldn't schedule any simulation to these dates to make it easier on our staff, as well as to notify the importance of educating for them. And then we provided resources. We always have to tailor our education for our learners. And as we grew these programs, we easily realized that some of our staff wasn't very comfortable in the creation of classes and they didn't know where to start. So after our first presentation, there was a lot of questions there. It was a lot of things that needed to be clarified. So leadership created class development checklists. So where is point A for the simulation operations specialist and where is point B? We also kind of wanted to have an overview of what the specialists were covering so we could be able to give them some feedback and help them with that. So we created documentation just based for that. And a very important thing is we created a manager one-on-one feedback prior to the event. We wanted the staff to sit down with their manager, their content expert in simulation at this point, and present them what they were going to show the rest of the staff and get their feedback prior to it. This is very important because I think that there's two folds to the situation. Managers are our leaders. They're also going to be the first person that they're building a relationship with them. So having the capability to sit down with your manager in a non-judgmental way to provide them with a product is very important for us. With some of the stuff, you know, it ended up being a PDSA cycle, unfortunately, and we were stuck in implementation for a while. While we did schedule classes a year in advance, the very basic classes were very easily put in a monthly basis, but as soon as our subjects were getting more and more complex, we found that we needed to do a bi-monthly special instead of that monthly because our staff was getting overwhelmed. Not only did they have to continue their projects within the simulation department, but along with that, they also had to create these classes that might not be something that they were in their comfort zone. So that's very important for us to switch that out. And then as well as the resources for staff, you know, the class development checklist I already mentioned and the overview documentation came also from the PDSA cycle of realizing that people needed a little bit more of a champion for it. Here are actually two examples of our development class. So on the left, we have essentially a planning, you know, what topic that they want to cover. Did they have somebody who's going to help them? So that way, if they weren't able to show up the day of, there was somebody to take over for their class, which is very important for us. Were your goals and objectives identified, which is something that's very interesting too, because a lot of people didn't know how to write objectives. So it became a learning curve for everybody. Training delivery type was a didactic. Do you want to do simulation? Do you want to do hybrid? That was also very important. Your dress code, we understand, you know, I'm a person that loves my scrubs, but we also wanted to build their professional development with these classes. So making sure that they were aware, like, hey, this class, we're gonna dress up because that's, you know, what you do when you present, or we're gonna get messy because we don't want anybody to get ruined their clothes. And then emailing the training outline for their class, which is what you see on the right side, to myself. We ended up designating myself as the lead for this program just due to my background. So I ended up being a lot of the mentors for the staff that came in to assist. And then it also helped me keep on top of it. Along with that, there was a rehearsal with the manager, a class agenda. And then when we talked to them about rehearsals, like, what were you trying to accomplish? Because it's not just about them rolling in. We wanted to make sure that they took something away from it and they had a changing experience. After the program, debriefing as well as a complete of a sim data form. Sim data form is what we use to track just how many hours we're using. For this case specifically, we were using a simulation space. We wanted to make sure that they were aware that there was use of it. As far as the training outline comes, it mirrors the checklist because the checklist is for them. The training outline was for our documentation. So lead and structure, alternative, what training date, how long is it going to take? Most of our classes are around 3 hours long with breaks in between. Your training topic, your goals, your objectives, and your references. The reason why we put references in is because right now we're on the early stages of our developmental for our classes. And so we wanted to make sure that these classes can be changed and growth to the next level. So while they're targeted novices, they're going to target for intermediate next time. So if somebody else teaches this class, they can go back and identify the references they use to see if they can update them or change them. So at the end, because this class was essentially tailored to our staff, we decided that what was best was to take their own feedback. We asked them about if they understood the objectives of the class. So most people did. Did we create this class for your level of skill? Was it something that we have to turn back around and maybe reestablish some things? Or was it not challenging enough? And then the biggest one for us was the experience enabled them to identify practices in which I'm comfortable and feel I need more practice. And this was an option for us to see if we would have to turn back around and help this individual, or if we need to create more classes that branch out from a specific class. So the question comes is, what's next? What's next for us? Like I mentioned before, the class itself is in the novice stages right now to help our staff measure their level of growth and then move on to the next step. We are constantly looking for new topics based on the deficiencies that we have noticed within the staff, whether if it's a new program that has a new topic that we haven't heard about. Has there been any updates with the Society for Simulation that we feel that we can grow with it? We also realized that this class ended up becoming kind of like a forum. Some of the projects that we presented to the staff, there was a lot of questions, and we didn't really know how to go about it. So it became like a process review. So we were doing something that was in a policy and a procedure and it wasn't written correctly. We could turn around, talk to the leadership, and try to get some clarity on it. If there was a new procedure that was coming out, instead of having to hunt down people, we created a special section for the staff to be able to sit down and talk to their leaders about the new procedures and how do we implement them. So because we noticed that as the classes went by, we needed a way to document it, what changes we made, because these things were being also reported to the higher leadership, our directors, so they were aware of what's going on. So we also created a developmental debrief form that provided them with the date, the presenter, the class, what went well, was the content appropriate for example, did it take enough time, did it not take enough time, what could we improve? Can we do something better? Can, you know, we had a class where we didn't have a good alert system. So we were playing Jeopardy and everybody was trying to jump at the same time. We're like, okay, we need to figure out how do we play Jeopardy with 15 people at the same time. And then anything that needs to be communicated, a lot of our policies and procedures are updating because we are an accredited body, we're getting accredited. So we had a lot of confusion within the staff, so that was an opportunity for us to turn back around and say, hey, we kind of need some clarity on it. So the next professional development day, leadership showed up and they were able to debrief our staff on what the new policies and procedures are for the situation. So that was essentially how we developed the classes. As we grow, I do believe that the classes will grow with us, but it did give our operations specialists the option and the chance of growing themselves, because I don't think that we usually give this opportunity a lot to our simulation operations specialists. How do we grow them and how do we encourage them through our staff? My personal recommendation, if you have an organization that has a massive amount of SOSs that also need training, is to get leadership involved with the creation of these classes, and then base them on things that you feel that your staff needs assistance with. The great resources is the CHSE Blueprint course, so preparing classes based on that. Another great resource that I found for these classes was SimGhost. They have a comparability framework, which allows us to help our SOSs build their education mostly based on their level. And those are great resources to apply for that. And that is all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
How long does the courses take, Melissa?
So it depends on the topic. Our longest course was a full day. It was about 8 hours, but we did cover 2 different topics with that. And then we try to encourage them to do 4-hour blocks, which is 2 of didactic and then 2 of an activity. So that way they have to practice, they have a chance to practice what they essentially taught on to see how much information we've been getting.
So they get to model what they learned.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
How often do you have to do this training? As and one of my issues I always have is like every year I have new stuff coming and help, and which it brings up challenges at the beginning. Do you guys experience that kind of problems, and how you tackle this, and if you do?
So we haven't experienced that yet, because I think people are now being hired with the expectations that they go through these classes. There's two sides to that though, because since we try our staff to get it, what I usually looking for volunteers or volunteers for this event. No other way to say it. Nobody's gonna say like, no, I'm not gonna do this. Well, they might, but it hasn't happened yet. Is I find topics that I feel that they're going to be easier for them to present, like for, I think it was program development, I reached out to my highest SOS and I asked him to create a class with me about how to program development with it, and he was all for it. Some of these classes are also being, the reason why we document them so hard and so strongly is because these classes are going to be passed on to the new hires. So the basic ones, we can easily sit them down in a classroom and have a lead go in and sit down and be like, hey, this is what the bases are. This is all depending on what level the new hire comes with, but they're very flexible to help them out with.
Do you have any advice? We're about to hire our first SimTech, SimOps person in our department. And my fear is they will be the lone SimOps person in a new department. Do you have any advice for both keeping them current, letting them grow in a role, and also for other faculty, just kind of be understanding to help someone grow in a role?
So the first advice that I have is trying to get them associated with professional associations. I guess this would be my only disclosure. I am not affiliated with SimGhost at all, but they're probably one of my favorite organizations to be a part of because they are Sim Tech Ops specific. If your organization can do any kind of return on investment, they have a full online resource for simulation operations specialists, from basic to intermediate all the way up to the end. The other thing that I encourage people is also with that professional organization, they do have a forum that people can ask a lot of questions for. Once you join simulation as a tech, you're never going to be alone. So make sure that they're aware of that first off. If they have a Facebook account, there are several simulation healthcare operations accounts that people will ask the most questions that you would never think of, but somebody has an answer. I was just there the other day and they were asking about how to put ketones on fake urine to help with that, to create that. And I was like, whoa, and somebody had an answer. So Google is your friend. So be mindful of that as well. Last, I am also going to be that person that says June, my contact information, if you want it, I will let me know. I will be happy to reach out to your SimTech and help them out. I just onboarded 3 new people that had no simulation experience and I brought them up. So helping people out, I think it's going to be finding that community.
Yeah, I think for the person we're looking at, they're coming from another facility that's smaller than ours. They've facilitated, but I don't think they were incorporated, which is part of the reason why they're looking at joining us. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the concerns this person had, was being kind of the only person in operations. I'm like, well, we've all been operations. We didn't have this role because we were also doing it. So you're part of a team. So at least they're familiar with other mannequins, but not ours. I'm like, we will bring you up to speed. But I wanted to just kind of see, I loved what you were presenting, because that's kind of something I'm thinking as a department we need to have, is some opportunity to both team build and kind of make sure we're all moving and growing together as a team. So thank you for presenting this. This is really, really timely information.
You're welcome. And let me know if you have any questions. I would love to help out. I think from somebody who's been in the position that your tech has been in before, the thing that helped me is I want to know the why. I don't want to know why I'm setting up an arm with blood and just putting it on the table. I think that one of the questions that when I came in, I was like, who are the learners? What are the objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? Why am I putting blood? You know, I think that was one of those things where, like, when I onboarded on my last job at a different simulation center, I would sit down with a sim tech on Monday and I would give her the role of the week. And I said, today we're going to have residents come in. They're going to practice CPR because we noticed that their CPR is not that great. We're going to have 5 of them. They're going to have rotations. Essentially the pre-brief to pre-brief, because that way the person is fully aware what we're going to do for that week and how we're going to do them. And then also taking that one person aside and introducing them to the lead educator. This is so-and-so. She is going to be our new simulation operations specialist or sim tech. If you have any questions, please reach out to both of us. So that way they're included in the team aspect of it.
So I'm going to ask a dumb question, and only because I don't want to wait until we have a new person here. Is it preferable to use a sim operator title over a sim tech?
There's never a dumb question, so I'm going to throw that back at you. I think the reality of it is that, so we use our sim techs, we have sim techs, and we usually call those the part-timers. That separates our part-timer for a full-timer. If we have a simulation operations specialist, that's going to be the person who's usually lead in it. Myself, I like the role of sim operations specialist because I am knowledgeable and I have the background behind it. I do know that there's people who they don't really mind about the title, but I think as our career grows, most people want to be known as operations specialist because the term tech has kind of been pushed to the side. Right. Like, you know, the menial put things, you know, pick things up, put them down.
Right. And that's my concern, because I'm in an academic center that people get very hung up on titles. And I do not want whoever our new teammate to feel like they are being put in a, let's say, subservient role as my job is to set up and clean up. I'm like, no, that is not what this role is.
Yeah. I've also heard people calling them technology specialists, mm-hmm. which is another good way, because they're there for the technology side of it. They're right. For I think the big one is that when you work with people, don't ever present the tech as just the person that picks things up. This is John, our simulation technician. He's a member of our team. He's going to assist us today in running your program, because there has been times where we have been in programs and the educator says, hey, this is Melissa, she's here to clean up. Well, no, I'm here to support you.
Right.
I like the way that you use the term tech rather than just dismissing it or throwing it away, saving it for the part-timers. I think that's really a smart move because it gives it just creates a nice environment. I really like that. I do like the fact that giving a title to that, we refer to our simulationists as simulations. And that's what we like to call them because it's, number one, it encompasses everything and it has a bit of professionalism in the title as well. So we like to go with that route. I think that works well, but I do like the systems operator. Very nice.
But it depends on a multitude of things because it's one of those things where just like this whole program is talking about, we have to encourage growth within our organization. And at some point, my hope and dreams is that education operations becomes one unit and not two separate units because we cannot support simulation alone with just the education part of it. It comes with the innovation and the growth of the technology specialists that come with it. But operations is a multitude of things. It's not just the technology, it's the people, it's the resources, it's all so many things and competencies. And that's why I like operations specialists because we're not always going to deal with technology. Our people sometimes deal with training the SPs and crowd control and moving them from one area to the other. But then another day, they're logistical support. They're creating their rotational schedules with their simulation learning strategists. Another day is if something breaks down, a lot of times these are the people that are stepping up and saying, hey, like I got to go somewhere. I mean, the only example I could think of off the top of my head is like my first day on the job, we had a maternal simulation. And our standardized patient was nowhere to be found just because of scheduling issues. And they're like, "Oh, we need to do something." I was like, "Well, I give birth twice. I'll fake it for 5 hours." You know, our simulation operations specialist needs to have some theatrical background. So how do we do that? You know, we're all encompassing, and I think that's as soon as we get out of that mentality that we're just here for the technology and we're here for the full picture of simulation, I think that more people will see it as a beneficial role in our business.
I think also when the simulation operator has a bit of, I don't know, it seems like the faculty tend to use them as a resource as well when they have confidence in them. And I think what you're doing allows them to have confidence to do that. So I think that's a really good step forward.
And I can tell you from watching Melissa put this together and watching this grow as a team approach, she very much takes the team approach and works with all of our leadership team and takes feedback and listens to the leadership team about what do the SOSs need. Like she comes onto it as a SOS manager of what she feels they need. And then she also works with the leadership teams and she also listens to the SOSs. So I think she's taken a very global approach. And it really shows amongst all the learners, and they're excited to come in and do these professional development days. She makes it fun with games. We offer, we bring lunch in for them. So it's been a very engaging and positive experience for our team. So thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Okay, and this concludes this session of the webinar. Do you have any other items you want to include, Cindy? Let me stop the recording now. Hold on.
Yes, we can stop the recording, and I wanted to thank everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight and seeing our wonderful presentation. And at this time, if I could have all